Hello, this is the New Education Show with Dean Bell and Dean Kevin. We're here on every week, and we're talking about becoming more aware, really educating ourselves in a true sense. Luther Standing Bear, which is a Lakota Sioux fellow who talked a lot about how the children of the Lakota were raised. And it's very interesting that they supported the natural environment, didn't destroy it, didn't go about destroying it. Okay, thanks for listening. This is like a comparison that you can use to compare what we have going on now in the world with education and what an example of people living with nature, what could be. It's just very important to see where we're going and where we've been, and comparisons do that. They help us to see more. So this is just something that we can utilize to give us ideas or to give us inspiration, whatever you want to call it, to see that there's other ways to do it. Just simply that. We don't have to comply to what's going on with the world, and we can do better for ourselves, because this is creation, so we can create. Yeah, this is creation. We can create anything we want. So why create distortion and what you see going on today? So again, I bring these up once in a while, these examples of how, especially the indigenous people lived, to give us different viewpoints on how we could do better. And any comments from you, Kevin?
Like you were saying, I mean, that is the very nature of creation, that we are here to create and experience whatever we want through the ideas that we decide and construct our consciousness with. And like Duane says, there's room for everybody and everybody's unique individual expression of whatever they want to create. And in the video you just shared, it was Luther Standing Bear was speaking of how one of the major tenets of how they would raise their children is they wouldn't encourage the notion of competition, of pitting one individual against the other and having them like we do in the standard indoctrinating systems of today, where individuals are tested according to their ability to basically recall useless information, then compete with others as to who can get the biggest score and such. And of course, the idea of competition is a major factor of so-called civilization as it stands. Everybody has a sort of mentality, consideration of having to compete with others to get what they want. And this obviously gets ingrained in the consciousness and sets people up with the consideration, and which then becomes, of course, subconscious, but nevertheless will still be motivating their actions. That everything that you want in creation, you have to fight for and compete and battle with others for, whereas there is plenty of room for everybody to create whatever they want. And of course, the ultimate expression of the taking on the idea consideration of that there is lack and you have to compete with others for it would be exemplified by the very reptilian controllers, which have dominion over this simulator. For all of their want to control stems from the fear of not having what they want and the fear of others getting that which they want. And so that fear, if it continues to be cultivated and builds upon itself, will express itself as then, in order for an individual to have what they want, if they think that others can prevent them from having that, then they then go into a mentality of having to suppress others and ensure that they are put in little boxes where they are very limited as to their creational capability. And so that then the controllers can then have everything, and also they then model and manage and manipulate the consciousness through agreements to also effect an overall designed simulator according to the controllers' model of them having everything and everybody else having nothing. And so this is one of the major underlying considerations in the overall consciousness of this simulator, the notion of competition as I said, of having to compete with others for what individuals want, whereas in reality, everything is available and there's room enough for everybody to create whatever they want. And through awareness as people and individuals and species and even the reptilian controllers get to realize this, then they should, in theory, come to the awareness that there is no need to control others in order to get what they want. They can have everything they want anyway without the necessity of having to control others and to manage their consciousness to fashion a simulator overall effect experience that they want to have. And so I just thought I'd add that in response to the video.
Thanks, Kevin. You see how the children were taught to share and to join many clubs to help others, support. When you support each other, it all makes sense and there's plenty for everybody. The chief was usually one of the most generous ones of the tribe. He gave away many of his possessions. I don't see how you keep doing that, but you keep having to recreate them. But the idea that you can support each other and everything's okay is something kind of strange here, because like you say, the competition is so prevalent. But here we see in a society that supports both the natural environment and each other, and it just makes sense. That's all. So thank you, Kevin. So you have something too, I know.
Yeah, and also with the taking on the idea consideration of the necessity for competition, that would also sort of suppress or nullify an individual's want to support others as well. So if you take on the notion of you have to compete and battle and fight everybody else for what you want, naturally then you're not going to also then support others, because through that supporting of them, that would cultivate and sort of that would also cut into the fear of the individual feeling that of other people having what they can't have, and so they're not going to support others. And so pretty much the idea of competition and the need for that would be almost married to the idea of not wanting to support others, for that very reason, for the fear of doing so, that others will have what the individual won't. And so you can see that the competition and that has also sort of fed that idea of really also maybe on the surface the average personal self may seem as though they're supporting of others, but as the consciousness is very much infused with fear and competition, that really under the surface that would the surface of wanting to seemingly be in support of others and would probably be anything but. But obviously when individuals become more aware, they start to recognize that everybody is in the same life, everybody is the same awareness ultimately, and of course then then everything is available for everybody and everybody can create whatever they want. And so and yeah, it was interesting that he said about giving away all his possessions. I mean, again, that would almost be along the lines of giving up all the attachments to things as well, because with all the things that people have, particularly in these days, I mean, people have houses from floor to ceiling of of stuff that the great majority of it they don't really need, but that which they are emotionally attached to. So surely an expression of becoming more aware would be an individual who can move more and more so into a position in creation where they don't need so much stuff other than that what is necessary for survival. And of course you would see that with the indigenous peoples also. They would have what they need for survival. I mean, they would have their gifts and they would make to each other, and they'd probably make their toys and stuff as everybody does, but it wouldn't be to the extent that it is today. You see with everybody's possessions and such. And so that's almost a lesson there in and of itself, that even though they may have these things as we do, they are quite prepared to let them go and release them, suggesting that they have no emotional attachments to any of that which they create.
Yes, but go ahead. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing your viewpoint.
It's slightly a different subject matter, but I have some information I will share from a book. The book is by David Icke, and it's Remember Who You Are. You see, this book he wrote back in 2010 or 12, I believe. And it has a lot of information, of course, about what's really going on in the world. Because regardless of what individuals may think of David Icke, he has got a lot of well-researched information, particularly the infrastructure of the dark force controllers and their bombardment on humanity and their effect, therefore, on the human experience through the managing of the consciousness through their various technologies and infrastructure, particularly with all the subliminals and the programming and all the 5G and all the cyberspace technologies they're bringing to bear. But one of the mechanics for their control of humanity is through, as we all know, is the Alaskan-based high-frequency active auroral research program, or HAARP, and he has quite an extensive breakdown of HAARP, and so I can read some of this, and then I will stop at certain points to give you a chance to comment if you wish to, and then we'll see how we do for time. But yeah, this will be my share for today. And so, the following information was sourced from the book Remember Who You Are by David Icke. This is not, as you can see, a time for faint hearts. There are some very serious challenges that face us, and one of them is the potential for a technology known as HAARP. It is no longer possible to understand what is happening with the world and human behavior without adding the weather manipulating, earthquake causing, mind controlling HAARP to the list of possibilities. HAARP manipulates the ionosphere in the upper atmosphere to do its dastardly deeds. The ionosphere is an electrically charged region starting around 50 miles above the Earth and extending for hundreds more. It consists of ionizing radiation that is deadly to humans. The ionosphere and the stratosphere below protect us from the worst radiation excesses of the sun, while the ozone layer filters most of the ultraviolet light before it reaches the Earth's surface. If this didn't happen, we would be fried. The ozone layer has been damaged already, and now they are messing with the ionosphere. Work on the Harp Facility in Alaska began in 1993 and was, we are told, completed in 2007. HAARP is jointly funded by the US Air Force, the US Navy, the University of Alaska, and the deeply sinister Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, the technology development arm of the US Department of Defense. It is, in other words, a military operation, and if DARPA is involved, its agenda will be focused on human control and manipulation, and worse. This is, after all, what DARPA was created to do. What we can see in Alaska is not the entire extent of the HAARP technology. It is much more extensive than this, and connects with other facilities around the world that are being added to the network all the time. There is no way that countries like Russia and China are not involved with similar research either. In fact, We know about the Sura ionospheric heating facility near the Russian town of Vasil-Sursk, and there are other such facilities around the world. Researchers have connected HAARP technology to the blue spiral of light that appeared in the sky over northern Norway in December 2009 on the eve of Barack Obama's Nobel Prize acceptance speech in the country. The light stopped in mid-air and began to move in a spiral shape before a blue-green light shot out from its center and stayed visible for 10 to 12 minutes before disappearing. You can see the footage on YouTube. The light appeared very close to the European Incoherent Scatter Scientific Association facility. This is described as a HAARP antenna farm, and there are HAARP-connected facilities being built around the world. Another confirmation that HAARP is a global, rather than purely an American operation, is Rold Synurovich Sagdiyev, a leading Russian scientist who served on a scientific committee developing the HAARP project. Sagdiyev was the former director of the Space Research Institute, the Soviet Union equivalent of NASA, and an expert in nuclear science and plasma physics. HAARP is not an American mind control, weather changing, earthquake causing technology. It is the bloodlines technology, and therefore involves those serving the bloodline, no matter what their apparent nationality.
Well, I just wonder where he gets his information. Does he have a research team, or how does he appropriate all this information, knowledge that he's got over through the years? He seems to have a lot going on here. Do you have any idea about that?
Having listened to interviews with David Icke, he has been asked that question a number of times, because although a lot of the information is available if you look for it, it's all online. A lot of it is through documents. A lot of the information the Dark Forces are putting out anyway, they're putting it out through their movies and their series and their stuff on TV. And if you can if you can be objective to it and you can see what it is the controllers are putting in their themes, then you can get a very good idea of their agenda through through their TVs and movies and such. And of course, a lot of their stuff is documented. A lot of stuff is they've openly and blatantly written about. But David Icke would always come up very often with a lot of information that is very cutting edge, or that which no other researcher has produced at that time. And then when they then go on to research it, they validate it very often. And when he was interviewed by people, he would say that what he does is he sort of sits in his own sort of space, and he'll just receive, as he calls it, impressions and insights from other sources, and ideas and impressions and notions will just pop into his mind, and then he'll then research it. And then almost as though through synchronicity, he will come across all the various people and documents and information that is required to verify that which has popped into his mind. And he would say that he was getting it from consciousness, because the vast majority consider consciousness to be that which is almost like the true essence of the individual, whereas our references would be that the consciousness is the vehicle that we program to experience this reality and is therefore the personal self, and our reference is that is actually awareness and real awareness that animates through the consciousness. But nevertheless, his word, therefore, which would represent awareness, would be, he would term it as consciousness. But I mean, obviously, the reason why Duane has changed, has produced the references that he has, is because a lot of the old references have a lot of idea attachment and baggage, and a lot of distortion ideas applied to them. So that's why he had to use and start utilizing a lot of references that have never been used before. And indeed, that's why he's doing his new language as well, to almost divorce entirely from the language as it currently stands, because of the extent to which literally every word and phrase and term is tap-lined. But as I said, David Icke, he said that he would receive information from a consciousness, which we would term and reference as awareness. So it very much suggests to me that he is probably tapping into his real awareness, and his real awareness is supplying him the information, or it could even be the guides who are taking the opportunity to give him information that they know he will then share with the world. And although he doesn't make mention of the real guides or the real universes or any references of the years, because he is evidently not at that stage of the process where he is obviously ready for that, to move into that position. I think I wouldn't be surprised if, nevertheless, he is being given a lot of this information by the guides, who then know he will share it. But of course, as we've said, regardless of the information that is provided, unless there is references to the years, all that is happening is the information is being provided, what's happening in the one-dimensional physical arena, but no solution is being offered as to then what to do with it. And of course, then a lot of people then get very emotionally attached with the ideas. And of course, when people come to learn of the reptilians and so on and so forth, they are now drawing attention to themselves, and the reptilians will know who becomes aware of them. And of course, then individuals are out there without their connections, their real awareness, are rather vulnerable. And so, yes, that's how he says he gets a lot of his information. He will just sit there, it will come through to him, and then he'll research it, and everything will fall in place. And all the relevant people that are required to verify what has popped into his mind will come to the fore, and then he'll write about it. So I remember when he originally, he said that's how he came across the information about the Saturn moon matrix, when he was putting out the ideas that the moon was a hollowed out planetoid, and that that Saturn was broadcasting frequencies that were being amplified by the moon and then broadcasted onto the planet for control purposes. And also he went very extensively into the idea of the simulation as well. And of course, this information has been mentioned before by other researchers, but again, a lot of it, like Zachariah Sitchin spoke a lot of this as well, when he was, and the Carlos Castaneda series of books, where he was interviewing John Juan Matus, who was a shaman who had a lot of information about the reptilians and the simulation and their control of it. And so, as I said, then David Icke would then go around, and he would then stumble across, and he'd then come across all these books and researchers and all this old hidden material, and some of it still floating around online, and that would verify his theories. So in a very long-winded, round the block sort of way, I would suggest he gets a lot of it through his real awareness, possibly by the guides who are giving him the information. And then a lot of it, and then the other stuff of it, he will get through, as I said, just through meticulous research, because a lot of it is available. It's just a case of individuals having the time and the perseverance to sift through it all. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. It's out there. I mean, everything's out there for people. It's not like it's a mystery, especially when you go to the movies and you do go to alternative sources of information, the media. I mean, it's all out there. Just a matter of whether you want to wake up to what's really going on and to see more. And yeah, it's like you being available for the real guides for experiences so you can share with us. So the same with David Icke, a possibility. That could be happening too. Whatever the case, it's your real awareness and the recognition of this reality that's important, and that's what we're here for. So Go ahead. Thank you.
So now we have the potential for energy wars, weather wars, and geological wars, and they have already begun. HAARP fires in either continuous or pulsing form incredibly powerful electromagnetic radio waves at a specific point in the ionosphere in the upper Earth atmosphere, causing it to vibrate and bulge. HAARP can cause earthquakes by making the ionosphere vibrate at the point of impact, and this resonance then connects with a related point on the Earth's surface, which is entrained, or made to resonate in sympathy with the vibrations triggered in the ionosphere. This resonating electromagnetic laser beam between the target area in the ionosphere and the target area on the ground can cause the Earth to shift, and hence an earthquake occurs. This is most effective, of course, if you target a location in a geologically unstable area. Scientists have found that earthquakes inflict changes upon the ionosphere and magnetosphere, and HAARP is doing the same thing, but in reverse. HAARP turns the ionosphere into a radio transmitter, and the target point on the Earth is the receiver. What a coincidence that the frequency range in which HAARP broadcasts is the same as that which causes earthquakes. Everything is a vibration in its base form, and if you distort the Earth vibrationally and electromagnetically, this will play through to distortion at the physical, holographic level. The interaction between the HAARP radio beam and the ionosphere magnifies the power 1,000 times, and this can generate more than 3.6 billion watts. By affecting the ionosphere, HAARP can affect the whole atmosphere from the furthest point down to the ground. The official story is that HAARP was established for scientific research of the ionosphere, but that's like saying that cruise missiles were developed to research the effect of explosions on buildings and people. HAARP is manipulating and superheating the ionosphere, and as the energy waves bounce back to Earth, they can cause a range of vibrational distortions that manifest as earthquakes, volcanic activity, changing weather patterns, and extreme weather events. HAARP can also impact on human thought and perception, among much else, and can produce an explosion greater than that of nuclear weapons, which it is now on the way to making redundant. In the late 1990s, a report by the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Security and Disarmament highlighted the real and potential dangers of HAARP. Representatives of NATO and the United States were invited to the hearing on which the report was based, but they refused to participate, even though HAARP is funded by taxpayers, and has the potential to affect the lives of everyone on the planet. There is no accountability because HAARP is actually controlled by the global military establishment, and that operates beyond the realms of politicians and checks, balances, and accountability. These people are a law unto themselves, no matter who is nominally in a political office. The way that HAARP is being used is illegal under international treaties, but then most of what the bloodlines do is illegal under the laws they impose on everyone else. These people will do what they like as long as we continue to allow them. The European Parliament document said, with its far-reaching impact on the environment, HAARP is a matter of global concern, and we have to ask whether its advantages really outweigh the risks. The environmental impact and the ethical aspect must be closely examined before any further research and testing takes place. HAARP is a project of which the public is almost completely unaware, and this needs to be remedied. This was written in 1999. Nothing has changed except that dedicated researchers have ensured greater awareness about HAARP and what it can do. Nothing has been closely examined before further research and testing takes place. The HAARPists have gone on their sadistic way in a total contempt of humanity and the consequences for our world. The document says that the electrical properties of the atmosphere can manipulate enormous forces and would have devastating effects on an enemy if used as a weapon. The report said that HAARP can deliver millions of times more energy to an exact location than any other conventional source. This energy can also be directed at a moving target. Worth remembering when aircraft or flocks of birds fall out of the sky for no apparent reason. The report highlights the potential of HAARP to manipulate global weather patterns. It's a cinch with this technology, disrupt the communications of others while itself continuing to communicate without disturbance, and X-ray the Earth to find oil, gas, and other resources. The bloodlines know far more than governments about where the resources are, and those locations are then targeted militarily, or, as with Haiti, with engineered earthquakes to take over and secure the resource assets that the target nation may not even know exist. The resource location data is also shared with their oil and other corporations. Anyone without access to HAARP simply could not compete. HAARP can also scan for underground military facilities, anyone hiding underground, and stockpiles of hidden weapons. HAARP has been operational since the 1990s, and this is yet more confirmation that they knew Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction when they were lying to justify the invasion of 2003. Funny how they couldn't find Osama bin Laden in his cave either. Another potential of HAARP is its ability to project holographic images that look like the real thing. I have written in other books about Project Bluebeam, which is planning to manipulate human perception by projecting holographic images of UFOs and religious deities into the sky.
And as we know, there's a gag order on the weathermen, which are controlled by NOAA, National Weather Control Organization, which is controlled by Raytheon, I think it is. It's a private defense company. I mean, all this is like, in a way, hidden, but this information about HAARP and weather control chemtrails, but it's not really hidden if you investigate. But and it's the same with this medical system, how things are put down or negated. They're, just so they can keep their own control of things. But it's a real mess. I mean, the control is so much that people don't even want to go there. How much control there is of the planet. So people like Ike, he's exposing it. He's got some good information there. I mean, detailed particulars. Again, it's taking it in, but then also how you get to deal with it. We have a unique position here where we have the cure, you could say, the recognition of what already is. The Syrians against the Orions, they didn't have all this technology. So that there's an idea, you could develop your awareness instead of technology, and they were able to offset. Well, they had a big 10,000-year war, the Orions and the Syrians, and the Orions had the technology, but the Syrians used basically their awareness, mind, to offset missiles and bombs and things like that, because they had a very good, unique relationship with their planet. But there's other ways to do things. So just throwing that in too, that you can, with your awareness, you can so-called defend yourself or be more of in a survival situation to what's going on, because not all of us can do the technological part, become techies and all that. There's so much to that. It's very sophisticated these days, or not. I mean, really not. But there's just so much going on right now. But keep it simple. Keep it simple by focusing on the NUUU. That's one thing we suggest. That's something you can sing to before bed to give you a greater insight into what's going on. And then, do your research, David Icke. Read books, look at documents. That's part of it. The knowledge is part of it, but there's so much more here. And that's why we're here, educating those who have an interest to wake up to more. Does he go into a lot more than the HAARP there in the book?
Yeah, David Icke, to this day, I think he's written a good 20 or 30 books. They stem all the way back to the early 90s, and slowly they've been progressing. He's been adding more detail. Originally, they were all about really. I think he started with uncovering all the banking scandals and how they manipulate the money system and through the debt slavery system and such. From there, he then progressed on to more information about the deeper parts of the control system with all the subliminals and such. And then at one point he introduced the reptilian involvement and how they are the force that is behind everything. And that was the point where he received a lot of his ridicule, which is is always going to happen. And that's the reason why the reptilian controllers remain out of sight because they know full well that even if their presence is discovered and reported, a lot of people are not going to believe it, and for those who do dare to speak of the reptilians, they will receive a lot of ridicule as a result of their efforts. And then when he unveiled the reptilians, he then later went on to speak about breaking down how we all are in a computer game like simulation. And again, that would be very accurate, that we all are part of a simulated computer game, and that we are only here for our experiences, and that the true essence of ourselves, which is our real awareness, are in real universes aside from the simulation that we are in. And the simulation's sole purpose is to recognize the is from the comparisons everything of the simulator provides. Now, obviously, David Icke didn't make mention of that, of the is or the purpose of the simulation. He would only say that the simulation has been taken over and controlled by the reptilians who manage the simulation, which again would be very accurate, because they have through agreements are in a position where they can not only feature in the experience of all those who extended agreements to them, but they can also, because of the nature of the agreements, which is based on the extending an acquiescence to their power over them, so do the individuals who are in agreement and agree to the power of the reptilian controllers over them. Now they have given them permission to manage their consciousness or exercise that power in any form they take. And so indeed they have manipulated the consciousness to form the controlled reptilian matrix that the simulator now is currently in. And so, as I said, David Icke doesn't make mention of the ears, but I mean, the references he uses are the same, except they're more old, outdated references, and of course would have a lot of spiritual connotations and sort of old religious ideas attached to them. And again, that's why Duane's using the new references that he is. So it's sort of it's fresh and uncontaminated and undistorted references that more express the ears and such. Like Duane says, as time goes by, the controllers get a hold of some of the references he uses, and they start to add ideas to them or distort them or apply them to their ideas. And so then they have to update the references again. And that's why Duane had to change the is, which was originally just one I and one S, to adding all the S's, because of course in came the idea of the ISIS and the terrorist organisation supposedly called ISIS, and so you have to update the wording of the is in order so it didn't have any association with that sort of thing. Otherwise, it would have these idea attachments applied to it, and which, as with any reference or idea, if it has a load of other ideas attached to it, it will drag it down into creation, and it will be sort of tap blind as a result. Because again, if you agree with or you utilize a certain word or an idea, if it has a lot of idea attachments or baggage applied to it, associated with it, you are also taking on all that as well. And so you're taking on, so what could be something that is referencing something very pure can in fact, because of the nature of the word and the ideas that are associated with it, be actually very tap blind and bogged down with a lot of other ideas. So but yeah, he writes about all sorts of things.
And you had an experience with him on the real side, right? You want to share that?
Yeah, it was only a brief experience really, but this would highlight what I was saying earlier, in that he is providing a lot of information about what is happening, but he is not providing the solutions to it. And there could be two reasons for that. Either he's not aware of the solutions, or he is deliberately not sharing or putting out those solutions, and therefore would represent a control factor. And Duane has said that there's a very good chance a lot of these alternative researchers, particularly the ones that are very prolific and mainstream and seem to be everywhere, it's that on a level, in actuality, they are actually working with the reptilians, the controlling reptilians. But yes, they're putting out the information, but unless they are referencing the is and the solution of how, through the NUUU song, how to connect with the real awareness and the guides to extricate yourself from the effects of creation, unless they're supplying that, they're really not helping people to get an inch out of creation. And as like because like any idea, regardless of what it is, regardless of if it's information that's really happening or not, these are still ideas that, unless the solution is provided, then it's just ideas circulating in creation. As the people agree to them, they get mired in with them. And as Duane says, and with all these ideas, when the revelations of reptilians become known, everybody who hasn't made a connection with real awareness will just latch onto the idea of it, and they'll become emotionally entangled with it. It will probably excite, as it does, a lot of emotional reaction, like outrage and anger and fear and such, which again, all emotions which keep people tied into creation. And so, as I said, the experience would show that, because I approached David Icke. He was with a group of people, and he does, and I've seen him a number of times on the real side. He does what he does on the physical. He constantly shares information about the reptilians and the controlling systems, pretty much like he does in all his lectures. So for him, it's a consistent thing. And obviously, as that is his intent, it then is so also on the real side. And on one occasion, I approached him and I was trying to speak to him about the ears and the real guys and the real universes, but he just didn't want to listen. And indeed, he stuck his fingers in his ears and made la 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 noises to drown out what I was saying. So that sort of suggested that either A, he's not ready for that level of information and where he is in his own process, or B, he is indeed then working with the reptilians, that yes, he's putting out information, but the information alone will not get people 1 inch out of creation and 1 inch beyond the control that is prevalent through their subconscious. And so even with all these individuals that become aware of all this information, and then they start opposing the system and thinking just because consciously they know about it and consciously they're in opposition of it. The problem is the vast bulk of the agreements to the controllers are subconscious, and they're still there. So regardless of people being aware of the information, they are still very much locked into it through their subconscious. And until through awareness those tap lines are addressed then and released, then regardless of how much information an individual knows, they're still going to remain the effects of agreements to control to the reptilian controllers through the subconscious, which will take them into future lifetimes and still in controlled and even probably more worse controlled situations.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for the share. And when we talk about Duane, it's Duane the Great Writer. He's an individual who has this recognition of something that's really never been recognized or articulated in creation. He's bringing it forth through his writings and through things like this, the Skype meetings and tapes and videos, a lot of it through New Kevin Smith YouTube channel. But Duane has brought this recognition of a reality that's really never been recognized, even by their saviors and masters, gurus of the past. They've gotten to a certain point, but now this individual has come into the physical to guide. We call them guides, not masters, but to guide people to get through themselves so they can see what is really real. Now, this to many people is a new concept. It's different than the spiritual kind of idea where you have faith, hope, love, truth, and all this. This is something that really has to be considered if you really want to get on this journey. It's a lot different, and it's a huge step for most people. A huge step because it's not along the lines of how people think and see things. So my suggestion is, if you're interested, read Duane's books. Google Duane the Great Writer, especially book 2 and 6. Go to Kevin's New Kevin Smith's YouTube channel. There's a lot of information there, and start your journey to become more aware. It's really more so than anything you can consider. It'll give you a groundedness, and it'll make sense to the questions you've had for a long time. Everybody has questions. They're wondering, about things. Well, this will clear things up as you become more aware, because awareness is everything. So it's beyond the knowledge you have, etc. So take a chance, take the risk, and you can become like James Bond, getting through yourself and facing all creation and all the things life is going to show you. Be courageous. You can do it. We're here for you. There's so much that we've done so far, and we'll be putting out a lot more as long as we have the social media here. Thank you, Kevin, for being here.
No, I just wanted to say briefly in regards to the YouTube channel, as Val says, it is new Kevin Smith, and as you click onto it, all the key playlists will be there, and on the first page that you come to, and the very first bar, the very first line of playlists will be the ones that I suggest you start with, because these are a series of 8 playlists, 8 videos of playlists, which are called the Real Wake Up, and this was a series of videos that Duane, the great writer, put together, where he breaks down creation and how the whole process works. He introduces the NUUU song, the real guides, and so on and so forth. And so as you go onto my channel, that is where I suggest you begin. Go through those 8 Real Wake Up playlist videos, which, as I said, is the very first line of the playlists. And if you click on any of my videos, you will find that the first website, it will be www.duanethegreatwriter.net, and from there that will also navigate you to a site where there are extensive numbers of Duane's articles, new articles that he has written. It also links to a lot of other information, and also right at the bottom is also a number of links to various books, and the key ones, as Duane said, as Val said, was new books 2 and 6, and these are free PDF downloads. The link is also available at the bottom of every one of my videos, and also on the main website you will find access to all Duane's new books, of which there are 9, and they're all available in Kindle versions and in book format. And yeah, just wanted to add that.
Thank you for clarifying that. New you. Thanks, Kevin. We'll see you next week.